this was a school. Some people are still surprised it's not actually a school in this area. The fire station and police station, up until work, and we'll be discussing that briefly this evening, nothing generally has been done in that building, I think, since the time they went in there. The DPW garage is one of these where it's out of sight, out of mind. But there's a place where we have a number of our employees working in that area, and work has relatively been done, very little has been done there with the exception of patching the roofs, and maybe some ventilation work. The library we've taken a more active approach on because it's probably one of our more physically visible buildings in town, and generally one of our more active buildings. The senior center needs work in there. We've done some work, but not enough to take care of that. This is, I think, has been an issue since we've had buildings, is that we've had them, but we really haven't taken care of what's happened. We've done Band-Aid approaches, and it just, costs keep escalating.
Mr. Callaghan?
But, well, like Steve was asking, who is in charge of, I mean, for instance, if we said, okay, we're gonna look at how much room we have in terms of bonding, and we said we wanted to put together a program for a beautification program of basically just signs and the facades of buildings and so forth. If we were to go to that approach, who would be in charge of that money? Who would be able to come in here a month from now and say to us that they went and surveyed town-owned buildings and so forth, and we need to fix the sign up here, we need to, at Damon Tavern, I think that's a little more than what I'm talking about here, but to paint an entire building like that, but just basically to spruce things up and make them look better, for that impression that Steve was saying. I agree with you. If we were, I mean, I don't know what the number is to do that, but who do we ask? Who would bring this information to us?
Buildings come under public works, and generally, those sprucing items generally are in the capital budget. They just haven't been funded.
But that's my point. They've not been funded, and that's nobody's fault. That's the budget constraints we have had to live with the last few years. However, if we're talking about looking for a solution to this, then are we saying Mr. Hanlon? Are we saying Mr. Welch? Who are we saying would be given the charge to do this, to inventory, make recommendations, put it all into a package and make a presentation a month from now?
I'm sorry, going back and forth.
Sure.
If you're looking internally, it would be Public Works and Mr. Welch. If you're looking at a much more extensive program, looking at everything from top to bottom, in the fire building, fire station, town hall, the senior center, the library, the DPW building, total, wiring, plumbing, HVAC, you may have to have somebody come outside to look at the whole issue.
For what I'm talking about right now, though, is I'm talking about just the image that we project. When somebody drives through North Reading, goes by a town-owned building, I'm talking about very, at this point, cosmetic, not HVAC or any of that stuff, but cosmetically, who would be responsible for the outsides of buildings that are owned by the town?
Mr. Welch could easily price those out. If we're talking such as like painting, maybe some shingle replacement, such as that.
He's responsible for that now.
Yes.
He's responsible.
Well, that's what I was getting at. It just seemed like when Steve brought that
He's
up.
responsible for it now, but to take responsibility for painting a building, you need a budget.
Correct, but all I'm
He'd be happy
saying,
to see.
I guess what I'm saying is if I don't know if I'm following your line of thinking here, but to basically, let's get an inventory of exactly what we're talking about here. Who's be responsible for that, and who could
Also
spearhead?
a method of paying for it. And sometimes when you can't afford to pay cash for it, you charge it. And if you're gonna charge it, you charge it when interest rates are low, and you take care of it. As much as you hate to do it, but you're at a point where it's deteriorating, and it's gonna cost you more in the long run. And, what are you postponing? 2 years, 3 years? You're still gonna have to take care of it. And something else is gonna have to give. And we need to address these concerns.
And eventually you reach where you have to move forward.
Right.
one second, Mr. Wilson. All good uses of money, and agree, you know, better to borrow when interest costs are low, but it's going to have to be, it's also a prioritization. Mr. Welsh and DPW, and also ultimately Mr. Younger, take direction from this board, which changes composition over the years. And debt service, as low as rates may be, costs money. And we allocate we have in the past allocated, I believe, $475,000 a year for debt service. When our debt service exceeds that, we take it from stabilization. And it, you know, we do need to look at our debt service schedule, because I believe it, you know, to a certain extent, may be dipping down a little bit, but it's been not quite double, but well in excess of the $475,000 we've been allocating. And I think this board or any future board needs to be prepared, if we're going to prioritize this, something else is going to have to give. And I'm all for beautiful buildings and smooth roads and all the rest, but when it comes budget time, we're gonna have to decide what gives. And that may be something in the operating budget and services that we provide. Should this board and town meeting decide that capital, you know, certain capital expenditures funded through debt service are a priority. So we can look at those things, and that's all well and good. Obviously, there's a column that needs to be taken care of in the next step here, which is funding source. We need to know not only, you know, that rates are low, but what the debt service is going to be. And we need to be prepared if we're going to incur, you know, $50,000 more of debt service a year over the next 5 years. We're going to have to decide as a board what's going to give, or if we channel cell tower revenues or some other dedicated revenue stream to a road program. And I don't disagree with that, but we're going to have to be prepared to make tough decisions.
Well, if you use
Somewhere
new
else.
growth money, or things of that nature to fund that sort of a thing, if that's, you know, new growth is found money, you know, yes, it's recurring over the next few years, but it's money that was unanticipated, probably has been anticipating it. Those are the types of things that we should be utilizing that kind of money for. And I recognize, you know, personnel costs are increasing, you know, school costs are increasing, and all the costs across the board. But I just think we have to take a more comprehensive look at maintaining. We have a fiduciary responsibility of maintaining what the taxpayers have already paid for and what we already own. And I'm not sure that we've been doing an adequate job.
I agree, but
Maybe
It
it's
will
not
be
the
up
point,
to the-
it's not the point where we have a public uproar yet, but it should never have to reach that point.
I agree, but if something else has to go, we'll have to decide what that is. It's not that there's a pot of money sitting there to do those things. You know, maybe we need to look at a plan for that, things like painting, you know, and other exterior improvements probably are not gonna happen over the winter. Yeah, we could pick a number and bond it now, or we could
I'm not talking about
look at it, you know, look at it for April on a program and a dedicated revenue stream, because if some of it is painting or fixing a sign, I mean, that could conceivably come from operating revenue, to the extent that it's a priority.
but it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. It depends what the priority.
We've been here a while, and it hasn't happened in a while.
And I'm gonna bet that it's gonna be tough to make it happen. Again, when we're presented
So until
with
we-
the choices, staff, program, paint the damn tower, you know? We're all gonna sit here with a big scale and decide what weighs more. I guess,
We're talking about, changes, you know, we can just get through as far as some line items to make up a deficit situation here. It's a different story. This is stop out the brush fire stuff.
Mhm.
These are debts already incurred that we have to pay for. Capital budget things, this is based upon several years of beating down our department heads and saying, okay, what's really essential now, what do we have to do? And again, we got another piecemeal approach, rather than, we have a capital plan. Yes, some of these did fit into that, although I don't recall $100,000 for the renovation and updating of them.
That was
Was it in there?
Yeah.
Maybe I
We
didn't
just did.
prioritize it, then. I'm sorry, I apologize. But, you know, some of these other things on here, as far as the road work, has been on there year after year after year after year. And it just keeps getting pushed down and pushed down and pushed down because the hot top is still there and the potholes aren't that deep, you know?
No, I agree road work is a priority, but I guess my point is that I perceive us getting, you know, we could sit here tonight and have a wish list. You know, I wish that we could pay for a fire suppression system for inside the Damer Tavern so that
Absolutely.
we can look at,
Those-
you know, everyone can have the benefit of seeing the roof is porting murals, and maybe we can even lease out that room and make some revenue back for it. I mean, I guess maybe I feel that we're getting off. We want to put an agenda item for the future of our wish lists, we can do that. I know. Go ahead, Mr. Mercer.
Well, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. We talked about a goal of putting together a broad capital plan. And, you know, some of these items are little pieces of that capital plan. And I think before we go marching off, making recommendations, we owe it to ourselves and the community to pull together this entire capital plan, including the needs of the schools, and then try to prioritize and try to get some dollar figure around it, and then tackle the problem of how with debt service, debt overrides, and the priorities fit into things. So we present to the community, rather than a piecemeal, we're gonna go off and do this today, and, oh, we got a surprise next year, is that we present the whole case and say, this is our plan, and we're gonna start to march down this plan and garner enough support, public support, to implement such a plan. And the other piece of it, we talk about the sign out front, it was on my list to bring up tonight. So, were you looking over?
I wasn't, I'm sorry.
You know, to me, those are little maintenance items that we should be able to find some funds to take care of, because they are, it's an eyesore, and, you know, it does diminish the pride in the community. And we should have a regular maintenance portion in our budget, and we should hold our administration responsible to make sure that those kinds of maintenance items, which are, you know, they're not small dollar items, but they're not major capital items either, get done on a regular scheduled basis so that we can be proud of our community, and we don't let things deteriorate to the point where we have to pay more money to get them fixed, because a little bit of maintenance many times saves a lot of dollars. And that includes roads. You know, if we were filling cracks in roads, then they wouldn't deteriorate at the rate that they've probably been deteriorating, and we wouldn't be spending that much money in terms of, we prolong the life of the road rather than have to replace it through neglect. So I think we need to think of it in a larger scope, and we should, you know, move forward to get this entire capital list together and start to work on it. And, you know, I view that as part of this budget process that we're entering. If there's a real priority for October town meeting that we need to deal with, and we still haven't found funds to deal with the things that we have to deal with immediately, these things have to be on a low priority from that point of view. And I'm reluctant to go off and say, well, let's go borrow to do this without putting together a plan that is looking beyond a few roads and some building renovations. I think we need to look at the big picture. We need to look at our debt service and where it's taking us. I agree, Steve, that interest rates are, very opportune, and we should be taking advantage of that, don't get me wrong, but I think we need to do some planning first. And maybe what I'm trying to say is maybe we ought to crank the priority up on the planning process so that we can take advantage of interest rates that may start to climb after November election at the beginning of next year.
Okay, well,